Right, hello everyone and welcome to the Seneca Teach Me. My name's Richard and I'm going to be here sort of hosting this event from a Seneca's perspective. But we're very lucky today to have Tom Rogers with us. For those of you who don't know Tom, he's he's very big in the Twitter community and he's a really experienced middle leader. And his passion for schools and to make them better places and basically for the teachers that work in them. And what he's done is he's written over 100 blogs on TESS, and he's often sharing his thoughts through his Twitter account, which is @RogersHistory. I'll talk a bit more about how you can follow the conversation on Twitter in a second. But before, I'm just going to give a bit more of an intro to Tom. So he's on top of his blogs and all the other stuff he does on Twitter, and obviously his work with students and teachers in school. He's produced videos on a YouTube channel. He's got his own podcast, and he's got over 200,000 kids now using his online courses. And back in 2015, Tom actually set up a bit of a Teach Me network, which is called Teach Me Icons. We've started this Teach Me network now, and so we're sort of unaware of the sort of impact that can have. We're really excited about that. But what Teach Me Icons does is they host free annual events for teachers across the UK, and they've expanded quite a lot over the last since they set up in 2015, and they're used by a lot of people across the UK for their CPD. Now, what Tom's going to talk to us about today is EduTwitter and how to make the most out of Twitter as an educator. So I'm really excited personally. So my background, I'm an ex-teacher, so I'm always sort of keeping an eye on what's going on the Twitter community with regards to education. So I'm really interested to hear what he's going to say. And what I'd suggest is make sure if you want to follow the conversation or be part of the conversation on Twitter, you can tweet Tom later to let you know you're enjoying his talk, or if you want to have other discussions with other people. The various different places I suggest to do that is the hashtag SenecaCPD, which I'll type into the chat in a second. And as I said, Tom's Twitter handle is @RogersHistory, and obviously the Seneca Twitter handle is @SenecaLearning. So in a second, I'm going to hand over to Tom, and he's going to get going. But I imagine there'll be questions that come up as Tom is speaking, as Tom is presenting to you guys. So what I'd suggest is, as these questions come up and as you've got these ideas, just in the chat down the left, it should be right-hand side of your screen if you're on a desktop, but you have to press something to open it if you're on your mobile. If you just put in any questions that you've got for Tom, and what I'll do is I'll collate those, and when Tom's finished speaking, after about half an hour, I'll sort of present those questions to Tom and let him know what you'd like to know more about. So without further ado, really excited to have Tom. So thanks for joining us. And yeah, over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Seneca, for having me. And hello, everybody from the world. Really excited to present to you all today about how to make the most out of Twitter as an educator. And I'm going to talk a little bit more now about what we're going to cover in the session. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen now. Hopefully that'll work.
Yeah, it's worked perfectly, Tom.
Perfect. So some of you watching this may have just joined Twitter. Some of you may not have even joined the network yet. Some of you may be more established users, and this may be more a refresher, or maybe there's a few different things here to help you think about how to make the most out of the network for you as well. The first thing I want to say is do as I say, not as I do. I searched long and hard for this photo of myself for this part of the presentation, but we all make mistakes, and I certainly do. I think I've tweeted 50,000 tweets. So out of all of those, there's going to be some that go wrong in some way. So that's the caveat on everything that I'm going to talk about in the presentation today. How has Twitter helped me personally? Well, the first thing is it's allowed me a platform to set up Teach Me icons that Richard already mentioned, to set up more recently EduDate, to write for the TES, to create my own podcast, and notably to actually connect with lots and lots of educators. And some of them have actually become very, very good friends. And when I say good friends, I mean real life friends, not just digital friends, friends you actually see, you meet up with, you chat to regularly, and you have more personal conversations with those type of friends. And that's what Twitter has allowed me to have. And when I first joined the network in 2015, I remember having a conversation with one of my best mates, and I said to him, I'm going to join Twitter. And we both grimaced at the thought, to be honest, at that time. And then as time went on, I was like, oh, hang on a minute. This is a whole new world here. It's a brave new world. There's so many opportunities with this network to develop, to grow as a professional. And that's really the source of this presentation today. So in this session, I'm going to go through why are you using Twitter. If you haven't started using it, I think it's a really good opportunity to think about what is your purpose on Twitter? Why are you there? Why are you using it? Setting up your Twitter profile to make it as effective as possible for you. How to tweet, when to tweet, what to tweet, followers and following, resource sharing accounts, opinion sharing accounts. I'll have a look at a few case studies, Twitter storms, and if you are caught up in a bit of a Twitter storm in a teacup, how to kind of deal with that and manage that. And then the final one, just reflecting really on the positives and negatives of Twitter. And, you know, I'm sure you can guess my conclusion already is going to be the positives outweigh the negatives. So why join Twitter? So I've come up with this list of reasons here that I think all of them are valid. The first one, and probably primary purpose for a lot of the people in this session, is to learn, continuous professional development, to actually pick up stuff from other educators. And there is such a wealth of materials. I'm sure most people in the session who are already on the network will appreciate just the breadth of stuff there is out there. It's a huge amount of material. So that could be your primary reason. Second one might be to share and to gain resources from others. So to share your own resources, maybe you want to get some feedback on them. And there's plenty of people there who are going to really appreciate what you're doing and what you're going to bring, but also to gain resources from others. It might be that you're using Twitter to promote a business or an enterprise or a service or something that is maybe there's a financial thing in it there. I don't know. A lot of teachers have side projects. A lot of teachers have things they've set up which provide them with a secondary source of income. And Twitter can be used in that fashion very, very effectively. It might be to share your opinions and to get feedback on the opinions. If you've got strong opinions about education, for example, you might want to share some of those thoughts and see what other people think. And it's a fantastic platform for getting that gauge of feeling across the profession. I know Teacher Tapp is an amazing app, and I'm sure a lot of you use it. And Twitter is almost like a even bigger version of Teacher Tapp, with your ability to launch polls, your ability to ask a question and get instant answers from hundreds, thousands of people. It might be that you just want to make those connections with fellow professionals. It might be as simple as, I want to build up a little personal learning network of people where I can dip in and out of their conversations, and I can share things and have a little bit of that mutual support, because it is difficult as a teacher. We know what it's like. You feel like you're locked away a lot of the time. It's 20 hours with hardly any adult company, and Twitter really can provide that. And I know it has for me. You know, it's been really, really amazing for me in terms of just as a network of people, you know. It might be that it's just light relief. You might be joining it just to log on there at the end of a busy day and have a laugh. And you've got accounts like Fake Head Teacher who do an amazing job of lightening the mood, but also punching a few messages home too. And it might be that you want to make a difference. And the thing is, for me, is that I have been surprised that some of the stuff I've just kind of pinged out, whether it be an opinion, whether it be a thought, a random thought that I've had, could have had an impact. And this tweet is one that I, not in a sad kind of way, but I kept this because I thought that's a reminder that, yeah, it's a little blue bird, but the impact of words can be huge, in a positive or negative way. And when it does have that positive impact, it can be pretty phenomenal, to be fair, for people. So I think there's a lot of power in the platform for all of us in this session to really transform the profession and help each other in some way, shape or form. And thanks, Liz Cross, for that comment. Truth on Twitter can be hard to find, though. You know, you have to remember that it is a keyboard and a screen. It is a picture. You don't know what's going on behind that keyboard or behind that screen. It is one aspect, one element of a person. It is their account. It's not necessarily them. And Twitter, it can be hard to find that truth on there as a network. So it's just something to be aware of. When you're setting up your Twitter profile, and this again applies to anybody who's already got the profile, but it could also be people who are just thinking of joining the network. First consideration, is it going to be a locked or an unlocked account? If it is locked, that means that when you comment on someone else's post, unless that person is following you, they won't see what you've said. And anybody that isn't following you won't see what you've said as a reply to that comment. So conversationally on Twitter, it might get a little bit more difficult if you have a locked account. However, the advantage, obviously, of a locked account is privacy. And a lot of people might make their accounts private if they feel that there are, for example, students from their school or anything like that happening. Some people resort to locking their account and monitoring who actually has access to it. But essentially, Twitter is a public network, and tweets can always be screenshot either way. Once you've got past that one, is your account going to be professional or personal or both? Now, I know there's been quite a lot of debate about this, and I know someone like Ross McGill is very much of the opinion, and he's joined by many, that it's better to separate your personal and your professional Twitter accounts. I'm not in that camp. I share personal and professional on my Twitter account. Obviously, I would like to think that personal is professional. Everyone will have their limits to how much they're going to share or not share. I think that's totally up to the individual. Of course, the more open you are on Twitter, the more people can see, and the more people then can have maybe something to say about it. So it's being prepared for that. It's learning maybe that and going along with it. Then you're onto your picture, your bio image, and your cover photo. I've said there 2 words, professional and consistent. So it depends how seriously you want to take Twitter, doesn't it? I mean, if you don't care, then put Scooby-Doo on there. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But if you are looking to, if you like, immerse yourself in this kind of edgy Twitter world, then a nice kind of professional headshot and a consistent cover photo, I think, is really helpful. And the reason for that is that if somebody's following 1,000 people, they might spend, I don't know, an hour a day or something on Twitter, and they need to be able to cognitively remember who you are. And if you're constantly changing that, or if they don't really have any clue what's going on from your pictures, it just looks like any other profile, it'll just make it a bit harder for them to do that. Setting up the Twitter handle, and this is a good story, this one, because Kate Jones, a friend of mine who's going to contribute to this at the end, when she set up her Twitter account, this would have been 2015, and we kind of started talking at this time, and we both kind of arrived onto Twitter. And when you first set it up, it asks you what your handle is, and of course hers now is 87 history, at 87 history. Mine is at Rogers History. Now, over time, people are gonna when they're typing in the Twitter browser to find you, that's what they're going to type in. They're going to type in your handle. So it needs to be something that's simple. It needs to be something that's easy, but also just thinking about your purpose and thinking about where you're going to take what you do online. It would be good if it's representative in some way of you. And obviously, if it's your name, then that's representative enough, isn't it? But if you're going for something else, then then it's about how that connects with what you do. Because I know people who they haven't changed their Twitter handles because people identify them through that handle, but it's not necessarily representative of them and what they do. The bio description, it's a really good idea to make sure you've got teacher in your bio. A lot of people don't, and that, again, this is not, people can do whatever they want. But if it's Edu Twitter, I think for me, it's good just to say, okay, this person's a teacher. What's their role? What's their interest? What projects are they involved in? What are they doing here, basically? And I think that is really helpful if that's clear and concise in the bio. And Hootsuite did a piece of research where they looked at the most engaging Twitter profiles, and they did actually identify a use of an emoji as one of the tick factors, if you like, of when people follow a profile or when people engage with a profile, whether that be because it stands out, whether that be because you can condense, because obviously you've got your character limit, so you can then condense it obviously into an emoji. The other thing they found is a quirky element. So if it's something about you, it might be I don't know, whatever it is, something quirky about you is another point where people might connect more with you on a personal level, or something a little bit different maybe. They found that people with statements at the end of the bio receive more hits, if you like, or more followers or more connections. And here's some examples from Edu Twitter of profiles that people have set up. And one thing that I wanted to kind of zone in on was the use of the hashtags in the profile. So if you look at Flora Barton's profile, she's got hashtag Shine On in the profile. Now, for example, if you were to go onto Twitter and you were to go into the search bar, type in the hashtag Shine On, it won't just show you the tweets under Shine On, but it might also show you the users, or the most popular users, or the most prominent users. So if you want to set up your own hashtag where you and your personal learning network can collate the stuff that you do together, then your profile and your friends' profiles, if they've got it in there, will show up as well on the searches. So it's not just the tweets, it's also the profiles, the photos, and whatever else is associated with it. So that's quite a handy tip if it's maybe early days for you on the network, to say, okay, what hashtags can I invert into my profile to maybe make my profile just a bit more visible and try and get a few more connections going. But you can see those as examples, and I think they're all pretty good examples of profiles that people have. So how to tweet, when to tweet, what to tweet. Now, it used to be the case that there was 140 characters in a tweet, but obviously that's now gone up to 280 characters. Now, the average tweet life, according to bodies of research that have been done, is 18 minutes. And I'm going to show you a graph in a few minutes that shows the span of when you tweet something by retweet, how long a tweet actually kind of lasts in the Twitter sphere, if you like. And a really good example of that would be Katie Hopkins, when she tweeted an apology about something she'd written in the Daily Mail. And she tweeted it out at 2:00 in the morning on a weekday. Now, obviously, because Twitter is a live platform, it's a little bit different to Facebook or some of the other platforms in that it's an instant platform. So unless it's a suggested tweet or something like that, your tweet will go into the ether, a little bit. Now, if it lasts 18 minutes, the advice, I suppose, is to tweet as much as possible. Now, when we're talking about advice, I mean advice to people who want to make more connections. If you don't, then do whatever you want. But this is the advice that's given to people who want to build more connections on Twitter, is to tweet more. I think the danger with that is you then think, oh, I've got a tweet today, or I've got a tweet right now, and then you tweet any old stuff. I mean, obviously, quality of what you're providing is important as well. So that tweet's going to appear. Now, you can use the hashtags within tweets. So if you tweet something, you can put a hashtag at the end of it. Now, I'm going to talk again later on that, because I've actually found personal experience, when I've put hashtags into tweets, they've actually got less engagement. I don't know what the answer to that one is, but that's my general experience over the 5 years. Language in the tweets is important. So personally, I only use language that I'd use around students. I don't swear on Twitter, but again, if you do whatever you want, I mean, essentially, but my personal thing is I would only use language that I would use around students on Twitter. So for me, that's important. Video. People are 3 times more likely to engage with tweets that include visual content. So this is from Twitter themselves. So I put on there to consider live stream. And if you want to connect with more people, then using Periscope, which is an app on the App Store, which you can connect with Twitter. Essentially, it's their Facebook Live, I suppose. Using something like that, incredibly powerful. And the number of engagements you can get from using that platform is very, very high. And even just normal videos, 3 times more engagement than text content. And that's something I've definitely found myself. Replying. When you reply to a tweet, it doesn't necessarily appear on your tweet section. You have to click on tweets and replies, which is next to tweets, to actually see your replies to tweets. So it's almost like they're less visible. However, if you've tweeted something and you want to kind of let that tweet go, you don't want people to keep coming back to it, or you don't want that conversation to continue, then not replying is actually quite a good tool. You can mute the thread, but by not replying, you're not going to draw the algorithms to that tweet. So it will almost just eventually dissipate. But the more you reply, the more it will be bumped up onto people's feeds. Just something to consider. Retweeting. Some people have in their profiles, a retweet does not mean endorsement. And for us in education, I think that for some people legally, I think that's quite an interesting one to have in the profile. I will retweet things that I don't necessarily agree with because I want to find out what people think about it. So it might be that some people include that in their bio, or they just avoid retweeting things they don't agree with. But whatever you decide to do, retweet is that key option on Twitter of how you're going to disseminate content that you want to, whether it's someone else's content or, as we'll discuss in a second, you can actually retweet yourself. You can retweet one of your tweets once if you want to push it out again. Quote tweeting. Now, quote tweeting is where you get someone else's tweet, or subtweeting, some might call it, is where you get someone else's tweet, copy the link address into your Twitter, and then tweet something above it. Now, that can work well, but in the etiquette of Twitter, I suppose, depending on what you're saying, it could come across badly. So I've done this before. I've seen a tweet and I thought, I'm gonna reply to that right now. And I've replied as a quote tweet. And it's been maybe critical, or it's been, I don't know, whatever. And then what that might be the equivalent of is me going into if I'm a child, it might be going into a classroom, picking up a piece of homework that someone else has done, taking it into the yard to my mates and going, look at this, it's a disaster. And they'll all laugh. And then ha, ha, ha. And the joke's on the other person. That can be the issue with quote tweeting. Again, it totally depends on what's being said. There's lots of different metrics there, but it's just something to be aware of. It's how it can be viewed. The trend at the moment on Twitter is for micro-blogging using threads. So it's 280 characters, but obviously what you can do is you can put your initial tweet on there, and then you can add more tweets below. So suddenly you're doubling, trebling, quadrupling the actual size of what you've written. And each section can obviously have 280 characters. So in the end, it might be like a big kind of storyboard, really. And that is now becoming as popular a medium as blogging. I mean, it's instant access. It's accessible to all. If it's a popular thread, then obviously it will spread like wildfire much faster than a blog would, where you have to actually click a link to access it, remember. So that's something to consider if you're if you're one of these people who's joined the network to talk about your views on education, then using threads and microblogging in that way is really, really effective. And I would say that's a more effective tool for a starter blogger than actually blogging, just because more people will see it and it's going to be accessible to more people. Direct messages just like Instagram or Facebook or whatever, Twitter has its private message function. You can change in Twitter settings whether anyone can DM you or whether only people who follow you can DM you. Now, I have my DMs open, so anyone can DM me, but if it's somebody that I don't follow, then it'll go into my message request folder. And then I can access that request folder alongside my DMs when I want to. And that's an important one, because if you're going to have open DMs, it might be that you think, I don't want to be constantly looking at message requests. You might obviously look at it less often, depending on what you want to do. The positive of having open DMs is that you can get requests and opportunities through the open DMs. If you don't happen to be following somebody, they might not want to publicly tweet you, can I ask you to do this? Or would you like to get involved in this? Because they just don't want to do that. They don't want to draw attention to it. They don't want to put it in public. So having open DMs in that sense is really positive. I've personally had a lot of opportunities over the years just from having open DMs that I would never have got. Now, obviously, if you've got a website and whatever, that's different. But if you don't, then I think open DMs is a good thing to have. Obviously, you're then looking at your safeguarding yourself, because obviously that means anyone can contact you through there. So that's something to be aware of. Again, it's a choice thing. It's a complete choice thing. Another little one to finish about tweeting. Monday nights are the prime time for teachers tweeting. So all the research shows that the best time for a teacher to put out a tweet to get the most engagement is a Monday night. Don't ask me why. I don't know, but that's what the research says. The second best time, as you can see at the bottom there, is Saturday afternoon. So if you've got a blog or if you've got a tweet that you want people to comment on or view or get involved with, then Monday night is the time to kind of premiere it, if you like, and say, okay, I want some feedback on this. I want to know what's going on with it, Now, one thing to be aware of as well is with tweeting is that people may be on Twitter from your school that you don't even know about. That they might have an account, it might be a dormant account, they might never tweet on it, they may have told no one they're on Twitter at all, but yet they're on there. And they might be following your account. Now, there have been at least 3 examples while I've been on Twitter of people who've messaged me and said, I liked one of your tweets, and it appeared on the other person's timeline as like this tweet. The person has printed out my tweet on an A3 piece of paper with X like this tweet. And it might have been a tweet about toxic schools, for example. And then that has been passed on. And then a meeting has been had to challenge that member of staff over liking the tweet. Not even something they tweeted, them liking a tweet or retweeting a tweet. So I think this is a really good thing to be aware of, that it is a complete public platform, and people, even though only 15-20% of teachers use Twitter, there may be more than that who don't identify as a teacher on Twitter. They might have personal accounts, What makes teachers engage with a tweet? Have a look at this one. I mean, often there is no rhyme or reason to why a particular tweet, if you like, blows up. This one got 1,400 likes and 3 retweets. Only 3 retweets, 1,400 likes. People love this. Is it acceptable for me to order myself a very expensive custom box of brownies for finishing my PGCE on Tuesday? I think the message here is that it's about connectivity. It's about what resonates. And that's what I find so interesting about Twitter, is it's like look at you could spend half an hour analyzing it. Why of all these people like this tweet? What is it about it, right? And this is a tweet I put out about 6 weeks ago at the start of the COVID epidemic. And as you can see over here on the left, it is literally a text-based tweet. There is no hashtag in it. There's no image in it. There's no link to anything in it. And if you look at the impressions is how many people have seen the tweet, just seen it, not engaged with it. So that's nearly 500,000 people. It's appeared on their timeline. And then going down from there, you can see the other metrics. So sometimes it's a case of there's no rhyme or reason. And if you're looking to gain more connections on Twitter, then obviously you want people to engage with you and what you're doing. Because I've seen people frustrated on Twitter when they first join going, I'm not being listened to. I can't get any followers. I'm not involved in the network. I guess number one is putting yourself out there, putting the content out there, engaging with other people in conversation and building the network, but also being aware that sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. And this is the graph I referred to earlier about he calls it the 18 minutes of fame, Peter Bray. But essentially, if you look on the bottom left of the graph, that is your time in minutes from when the tweet is tweeted. And this is the median number of retweets per minute going away from the tweet. So you can see how long a tweet lasts on average and how much engagement a tweet's going to get over time on average. I think that's quite an important thing to consider if you're looking to use Twitter, especially as a school. There's a lot of people are using it to promote their schools. And I think this is a really important thing to be aware of if you are one of those people. Just a word on followers. Now, I prefer to call followers connections personally, because for me, the vast majority, even people I don't follow, I'm still going to engage with them if they engage with me. And sometimes I'll engage with lots of people that I don't follow on social media, on Twitter. So I prefer connections to followers, really, because it is more often than not a mutual thing. Now, I don't follow back because someone follows me. And I don't expect anyone to follow me if I follow them. I think that's a strange phenomenon of recent times on Twitter. Is like, it's this idea of it's all about followers. It's less about content. It's less about exploration, growth, development, and just about followers. Well, if it was about that, it'd be pretty boring, wouldn't it? Because no one would be getting much from it. So I think that's my personal thing. Is I'll follow who I want, and some people only follow like 20 people and are followed by 60,000. Other people follow 50,000, are followed by 60,000, and so on and so on. I follow about 5,000 because I like to keep it broad. I like to see disagreement. I follow people whose opinions I strongly disagree with, and sometimes I dislike. But I follow them because I want to hear what they've got to say. I want to know. I want to challenge myself, learn more, get a bit more involved in the conversation. Warning at the end, look out for those whose only purpose on Twitter is to gain followers. If you want some suggestions on who to follow, you can screenshot that. There's a blog there, and there's a graphic I made last year with about 100 people to follow, whether that be people with opinions, bloggers, authors, or people who are offering free resources for download. 7 2020 hashtag trends in education. Now, I've made these for now. These are the 7 that I think either are trending substantially or have potential to be trending in the next few months. The first 2 are really good if you're new to Twitter and you're looking to see who else is on the network and who's there, and what they do. So I'd suggest having a look at those on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. SLT chat is for senior leaders. So if you're a senior leader watching and you're new to Twitter, SLT chat set up by Teacher Toolkit is a really, really good space to be on a Sunday evening. Primary Rocks, again, UK Ed Chat. EduNQT Connect is a new hashtag set up by, I think his name is Alfie Bash. And he set it up very recently, but it seems to be growing substantially. A lot of NQTs getting involved. I think it's a really good idea because, during my NQT year, if I'd have had Twitter and I'd have been able to chat to other NQTs on Twitter, I'll tell you what, it would have been a hell of an easier year. It really, really would have been. And that's what I find, like, if only 15 to 20% of teachers use Twitter, what a shame, and there's these kind of groups and networks that they can get involved with so easily by just downloading an app. Now, the dark side, if you like, the Twitter storms, as you would call it, when basically everyone piles on to something or something has happened. I've picked out a few infamous ones. First one is Raptorgate, as it was called, hashtag Raptorgate. Now, excuse me if this does sound like it's a 6-year-old talking about this, because it is in some ways ridiculous. But anyway, hashtag Raptorgate. Ben Newmark, he quoted someone at a conference. Children are like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park. They'll test the boundaries periodically. The fences have to be strong. And Dr. Allison has replied, a disgraceful analogy to use about children. And there are many, many more comments like that. Now, suddenly, when these responses come in, Ben Newmark didn't make the statement, someone else did. But if he now replies, that's what I mentioned earlier. If he replies to one of those comments, suddenly he's got 10 to 15,000 followers. Every single one of his followers sees the reply. If he doesn't reply, then you're letting comments stand and you're not challenging them. So just be aware that there was one actually last week. A teacher actually put out a tweet. It was a nice tweet, and they misspelt something, and they got jumped on. Now, they then replied to that, and most other people jumped in to say, well, this is ridiculous. It doesn't matter if she spelt stationary wrong. I think that was the word. But then there's always the odd one who will also jump in to back up the person who's first made the statement. So suddenly what you're ending up with is more challenge, and it's a bubble. It's like dominoes, and suddenly it's trending. It's trending, and your mental health is probably, if you're the person who's tweeted it, whether you're right or wrong in what you've tweeted, you've got a problem, you know? So that's one example. Another one, and this is more politics, is when Sean Arthur, the director of Ofsted, left Twitter. He shut down his account. He deactivated it. He hasn't come back yet. I know the mourning continues. The processions, the marches, the kind of black images on the back of people's, profiles and everything else for the departure of Sean from Twitter. But this is the original tweet that led to it. And the bit that you're looking at here is, and the first sentence right there, Mary sets out why it's impossible under your leadership to try to work with your union to improve things for all in education. Now, obviously that was jumped on. It was jumped on by journalists. It was jumped on by lots of people on Twitter. I mean, you can actually see some high-profile users have actually liked the original tweet. Teacher Toolkit, Mark Enser, Adam Boxer, James Thipp. So a lot of people have actually liked the tweet. And suddenly, this is what I mean. This is blowing up now. The Twitter algorithms, they're loving this. Now, what's happened here is Sean Harford's then decided to leave Twitter. Now, I don't know why he's decided to, only he knows that. He's not here to answer that question, but he's decided to leave Twitter. I'm sure he'll be fine. He's got some decent bonuses, but he's decided to leave. He's gone, right? Now, this is a storm. It's a storm in a teacup, but again, it's a storm. This one is a little bit more serious. And this was a tweet put out by a teacher last September. This teacher had more than 30,000 Twitter followers. And they said this. And it got a really strong negative reaction. Now, in that situation, if you've tweeted something and you don't mean it, or it's been misconstrued, you've got a few options. You can delete the tweet. You can explain why it was wrong. You can post an apology. There's a load of things you could do, right? This user didn't do anything. They didn't do anything with this tweet. They left it there. And then what they actually did, and I've never seen this before in my 5 years on Twitter, is they completely deactivated and shut down their account. They left it. They left Twitter. They deactivated the account and they closed the whole thing down. They have more than 30,000 connections on Twitter. They've never apologized or publicly addressed it, the tweet that you can see on screen. So in my mind, personally, I'm going, well, that's what they think then, right? So it's really interesting how this kind of thing can happen and how it can all work. How do you manage that situation? Don't share anything you wouldn't say to your mother or in a speech at the UN. Note to Tom, try not to get too wound up. explain and apologize, but don't be bullied into either as well. So if somebody's replying to you saying, you must apologize for this, or you've got to explain yourself, well, no, you don't. If it's a debate, have a think yourself. Have a think yourself, be true to yourself. If you think you need to, then do. If you think you want to explain it, do. But don't be bullied into anything. Mute or block if you want to. Expect people to criticize you. When I first joined Twitter, I had, I think, 100 or 200 people I was connected with. I posted a blog about role plays and a role play in the classroom. And a high-profile tweeter subtweeted what I'd done and said, here's one for the rubbish lesson plans file, right? Now that, at the time, I'd just come on Twitter. So I was hurt by it. I was surprised by it. I was like, this is my first blog I've ever published. So it can happen regardless of how long you've been on Twitter for. It's something to be prepared. You will be criticized. What you produce, what you put out will be criticized. And you might even get some hate, possibly. An option in that case is to lock or deactivate your account, either temporarily or permanently. And remember one last thing, DMs can be screenshot. Now, on a slightly happier note than Twitter storms and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to show you a little video now. I've asked a few people of their experience of Twitter, how it's benefited them, what they've got out of it. So let's have a quick listen to that now, if we can, hopefully.
Right then, so what difference did Twitter make to me, my career? Through Twitter, I met Joe Kirby. Joe Kirby introduced me to Catherine Biddle-Singh, hence I joined. Me and Joe and Catherine and a couple of others, we set up Michaela. So Michaela was a great springboard for lots of things. I went from Michaela to Charter, from Charter to where I am now, in deepest darkness happy. So yeah, it's changed things a lot. It also gave me a platform to tell people what I do as a language teacher, what I do as a head teacher. It gave me a platform to get lots of people into the school. So when we got lots of people into Charter, it made a massive difference to the Esprit de Corps staff, to their sense of pride, and also the kids had a lot of pride, and that was brilliant. So that was what Twitter did for me.
Connecting with educators and head teachers on Twitter, I've been able to secure placements for observations in schools that help me with my research assignments for university. It also helps me to develop my own subject knowledge and develop my knowledge of the progressing and changing climate of childhood studies and get up to date with the current research that's being produced. It also helps me to understand the approaches in a variety of different contexts when it comes to children with special needs and disabilities and children's well-being. I've met a real host of influential people such as Chris Dyson, who instill values in me and give me a sense of something to aspire to. And following teachers who share their resources and curriculum planning's given me a real insight into what I've got coming in the next couple of years when I qualify.
I get to see other people's ideas. We all have ideas all the time, and we keep closeted in our classrooms and rarely share them, even with the people that we're next door to. And yet, for some reason, people are more happy to share ideas into the wider universe on Twitter, and it's a brilliant way of sharing ideas. The second thing I've used it for is for sharing ideas. So if I've done something in my class that I'm particularly pleased with, be it a display or a way of approaching a topic, I put it on Twitter, and it's been really good to give back to the community.
Hi, I found Twitter to be brilliant. Brilliant in the fact that I now have an immediate network. I have the ability now to contact like-minded people, and more importantly, people that have completely different views to me that I can kind of tap into and learn from. It's really been helpful for me in these last few months with regards to extending my network in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do if we didn't have the global pandemic. And I've really now, from there, been able to develop the confidence to be able to stretch my wings and to extend my business to the extent now where I no longer am in paid employment as such, and I'm now effectively working for myself. And a lot of that has been done through the power of Twitter. So I'm especially grateful to it and would thoroughly recommend it.
So since setting up my Twitter account at KC Geographies, I've benefited from it hugely. Firstly, at interview, I've been asked questions like who my favourite person to follow on Twitter is. Secondly, it allows me to meet lots of teachers across subjects, different settings. And finally, for CPD, you know, your newsfeed on Twitter can be full of blog posts, ways to improve your subject knowledge, and amazing ideas you can use in your lessons.
I joined Twitter after the recommendation of my deputy head teacher back in the UK. So every day in briefing, Paul, the deputy, would always share something amazing he'd found on Twitter. And he said to teachers, you really should get on Twitter. And I remember everyone's reaction of just rolling their eyes thinking, oh, Twitter, come on. You know, and I think I was the same. I was skeptical. But I thought, I'll give it a go. Why not? And it opened up this amazing world of teachers, leaders, bloggers. I found out about educational events like Teach Meets that I had no idea were even happening. And it's just amazing. And then I started sharing, and tweets then led to me writing blogs and articles for magazines. And then that led to me writing books. So professionally, for my own professional development, it's been incredible, and I've met so many people. I've actually met Tom Rogers through Twitter, then at an event, and now we're real life friends. So there's lots of Twitter friends that you can make out there as well. It's just a great place. Embrace it. It's not perfect. It's like a global staff room.
Right.
Okay. Richard, I don't know what I'm on for time, but I'll wrap it up now because I know I've overrun. This is a summary for me of the positives in there. Again, screenshot if you want, but this is some of the things that to look out for. I'm not going to read through them all. I'll just leave it on screen there for a minute. But overall, Twitter is awesome, and the positives always outweigh the negatives for me. Even in the midst of a storm in a teacup or any of the other problems, it's still a fantastic place to be for teachers. It really, really is. If you want to find me or find out more after this, you can find me at Teach Me Icons, EduDate Official. If you're single and you're a teacher, then get on EduDate. And also Rogers History, rogershistory.com. I think that's it from me. I'm gonna pass back to Richard at this point, I think. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I hope you got something out of it.
Great, thanks, Tom. Thanks so much. Really, really interesting talk, and lots of practical takeaways to take away there. We've got a few questions that have come in. I hope you don't mind me asking and getting.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So first one I wanted to ask is a question from Leslie S. So she's asked, how do you make sure that you're not overwhelmed? Because like there's so much on Twitter, right? And the same with, I think, a lot of also educational websites. If you think of like TESS would fall in this category, Facebook would fall in this category. There's so much stuff out there. How do you make sure you find stuff that is good and you don't just end up spending loads of time looking through stuff that's not so good?
Yeah, I mean, one option is obviously to follow less people, but I don't go along with that. Another option you have on Twitter is to create a list. So, for example, if you want to, out of all the people you follow, you can create a list from those of people, and then you can click on the list and just look at what they're tweeting. So if there's maybe 100 out of the 500 people you follow where you want to check in on them first, then you could do that, and then, you know, that could be your Twitter experience. I know that users with 100,000 followers, they, even if they follow whatever amount, they might have a list of 50 people. They're the only people they directly engage with, apart from people who reply to comments on their tweets. So it's about protecting your mental health. It's about not getting too saturated. It is difficult though. I've taken Twitter breaks. The longest I've taken is 2 weeks. When I've been like, I can't be bothered. You know, I think it was I took a 2-week Twitter break. But equally, Twitter is addictive. You know, that's the thing. It's like any social network. They built it to be addictive. So you can go down a rabbit hole and waste so much time trawling through rubbish. So I think it's important to try and say, okay, this is what I'm going to look at today. You know? Can't hear you, Richard.
I'm muted.
There you go. Muted
It's
yourself.
happened once on a Zoom call, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So you mentioned mental health there. We've also had a question from Caitlin asking about how you balance all this stuff. It's constant on your phone. You get all your ping, ping, ping notifications. How do you balance the sort of work life, the fact that it's currently always in your pocket if you're spending a lot of time on EduTwitter?
I can only speak for me personally. It's been, I mean, I'm single. I'm not a leader in a school. I'm not, there's certain things I don't have that other people have that have allowed me to spend more time using Twitter or developing it. And also you have to remember that with my online courses and the other things I do, Twitter is also part of my work as well now.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as personal, professional. It's like that's part of my work as well, to use Twitter for that purpose. So the answer obviously would be limiting the time, deleting the app. If you are taking a Twitter break, delete the app and lock it. Lock your account. I've never done that, but I think it's useful. I don't know what Matt Dinner is saying, but it's probably something funny. So that's
just checking that you're on EduDate.
I think Matt, in answer to your question, the world's on EduDate, but Tom Rogers isn't. The only thing I do is the Cupid stuff, mate. All right.
Matt wants you there, so okay, great, thanks. So another question that's come through is talking about you mentioned school self-promotion accounts. So if a school or a department was looking to set up a sort of self-promotion account, what would you suggest is a good thing for them to start? What content should they start?
I think one top tip, Richard, would not call it a self-promotion account, because we're setting up a new self-promotion account today. That's probably not a good option. I think this is a difficult area for me, because the thing is, you could be working in a toxic school. I put a tweet out the other day. 5,000 people liked the tweet. It was about toxicity. There's so many people working in toxic schools out there, and yet you wouldn't believe it sometimes from Twitter. You think everybody's working in Disneyland. So my point is if there might be a modicum of control, you see. I know that is the case. I know that there are school communities that are very active on Twitter, right? They encourage staff to use Twitter, but with that, there's a real message, let's say, that is very much pushed that we want to do it this way. Now, I personally am an honest person, so I don't want to. I understand you want to promote the good aspects of your school, and I think that's fantastic to do, and I think I've done that in the schools I've worked in. But I think the best way to promote anything is by authenticity, and by honesty, and by integrity, and by sharing the positives from what you do and what you're doing, and just sticking to that. Because the thing is, what you don't want to do is you don't want to, if you promote the wrong thing, and then this is one of the biggest problems we have in education right now, is people walking into schools that are toxic. And they walk in from another school, and then they spend 6 weeks there, and they go, I want to quit teaching. And what they might have seen is 25 tweets saying, this is amazing, right? So that's going to happen. I understand that. That's media, right? But I guess all we can do is try to take our own responsibility, isn't it? And that's easy for me to say, because right now I'm unemployed. So it's dead easy for me to sit here and say, oh, don't promote or do this. Really easy. But that's what I will always try and do moving forward and I will promote the schools that I've worked in, and I've worked in 2 recently of fantastic schools. I will always promote what I can promote.
Great, thanks. And then a question from Julie. So people, and you were included in this, having just what you've talked about, is always saying you're meeting lots of people through Twitter. But I think Julie, and also a lot of people agreed with her question, is actually they found it really hard to meet people. So just wondering if you could just run through what like practical steps you would take in order to like start up trying to meet people and develop your network on Twitter.
I think attending events is key. You've got BrewEd, you've got Teach Me Icons, you've got ResearchEd. You've got so many events that are grassroots events that are running through Twitter. So attend those events, get involved with them, and actually start striking up conversations, different ideas you might have. Oh, does anyone want to set up? I know somebody said 2 days ago to me, not to me, but they said it on a thread I was in. Does anyone want to set up a support group for people working in difficult circumstances? And there was loads of replies. And suddenly this person said, oh, why don't you DM me? And then suddenly people are starting to connect that way. So I think it's just having the conversation, starting the conversations, being maybe a little bit brave as well. And not getting too downhearted if people don't reply or don't retweet or don't whatever, because people might be busy. Everyone has their own preferences, you know, but just keep going. And as I've said, I can list probably on my hand at least 5 very, very good friends that I would not have had without Edu Twitter, which is pretty phenomenal if you think about it, because it is just a little blue bird, isn't it? And that's what it is. But I wouldn't have had that without that network, you know?
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much. We're sadly out of time. I think we could ask you questions all day. There's lots of other questions I haven't managed to get through, which I'm sorry to those who ask questions that I didn't manage to answer. But what I'll do is I'll send them to Tom, and maybe Tom can tweet some responses to those.
If you're that desperate to hear the answers, you know?
I feel like this session's been very meta. It's been, you know, asking you to get on Twitter to talk about Twitter. It's all getting a bit much, but you know, we'll go away and having learned something today. So yeah, the last bit, more requests for you, Tom, and like final bits to wrap up. If you guys can continue the conversation and continue having these chats about how to use Twitter most effectively, don't forget you've got the hashtag SenecaCPD. You can tweet Tom. So Tom is at Rogers History and obviously at Seneca Learn. We'd love to hear what you guys think and how you guys found the talk. But then also there's a couple of things, the names of the people on the BT, people would really like to sort of know who they are so they can follow them on Twitter. And also the different information about who they should follow for each subject. People would love to see that retweeted by yourself again, if that's all right. But yeah, keep those conversations going. And thank you once again to Tom. It's been really, really good to see all the conversations coming through the chat. And I certainly learned a lot, so I hope everyone else did too. There seems to be a lot of love in the chat down the side there.
I just want to say thanks to everyone commenting with the feedback as well. Thanks so much for all the... I'm seeing the comments come through now, so thanks a lot. Cheers.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, guys. I hope you have a good evening. And yeah, see you again soon. Thanks very much. We've got lots of other teach meets and conferences coming up, so keep an eye on our Twitter for those. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.